The reference is coming from the text Bhagavad-Gita, verse 6. The verse says that you can't get rid of desires through indulgence or abstinence, only through knowledge. However, most of us know the right thing to do, but don't do it. Is Vedanta the answer for us? So let's look at this word Vedanta, have a look at what it means, and dig into the question. The word Vedanta is made up of two Sanskrit terms, Veda and Anta. The word Veda means knowledge, the word Anta means end. So the phrase or the word Vedanta means end of knowledge. So what does that mean? So there's three different ways that we can look at this. In one context, the word Veda as knowledge simply means information. And the word Anta as the end gives you the location. So what's it saying? Vedanta is located in the final portion of a larger body of knowledge called the Vedas. The portion known as Vedanta is encompassed in the Upanishads. So this first interpretation of Vedanta as the end of knowledge is simply giving us the location, telling us where to find it, the end portion of the Vedas. It's information. Another interpretation of the word Vedanta is that Veda means reflection. The knowledge that you practice through thinking. Anta means end or the culmination. So Vedanta is the culmination of reflection on the information that you have procured. So Vedanta then is the wisdom or the insight that comes with reflection. And when we talk about reflection, it means that we begin with humility. There's a genuine recognition of a gap in our knowledge, a gap in our wisdom. There is a sense of curiosity, a desire to fill that gap. Nature abhors a vacuum, and it's also true with knowledge. And we have this desire to grow. It's not just that we want to fill in knowledge for the sake of it, so that we can be knowledgeable. There's a recognition that by gaining this wisdom, by gaining insight, we're growing as a human being. So this is our second, if you like, interpretation of Vedanta. The third and the subtlest interpretation of the word Vedanta means that it is the culmination of wisdom. No matter how much insight you gain, you're always going to be able to gain more, deeper insight. Where does it end? Vedanta, the end of knowledge, answers the question, who am I? Whatever you experience, whatever your level of wisdom, whatever your level of insight, whatever information you are acquiring from the world, the quality of your experiences derives from you. Without you being present in the first place, no experience of yours can arise. So you, yourself, is the beginning and the end of everything that you experience. But who am I? When you start to answer this question, you start to answer it in terms of things that you know. Memories based on experiences you've had, ideas that have been impressed upon you from the outside. If you had had a different set of experiences, you'd have a different sense of who and what you are. But there is some core at the center of your personality without which that created sense of self couldn't exist. So rather than answering the question, who am I, from a perspective of what has been created through experience and memory, it answers the question, who am I, by giving you that identity which is not created. It's not built. It exists. So the answer to the question, who am I, as the culmination of wisdom, isn't given as an objective piece of information that you can pass on to others. You can pass on to others, I am a male or a female, I am this nationality, these are my interests, this is my job, this is my marital status, But the subjective knowing of your essential self cannot be passed on. It is a subjective knowing, not an objective apprehension. So it is your essential self, which is to say, that identity without which all of the other non-essential identities could not exist. Your nationality, your marital status, your job, your interests, your friends, your culture, none of these things essentially defines you. It defines a part of you, but it doesn't define your essence. So this is why we call Vedanta the knowledge of higher values. It establishes us in the beliefs, the knowledge of who and what we are. Higher in the sense that it is more true. Yes, it is true that I am a son, that I am a father, but it's more true that I am something deeper, more essential. So when we have this idea that most of us know the right thing to do, but we don't do it, what that means is that we have information, but not insight. I know that I should not drink excessively, and yet I still do. I have information. When we have insight, which comes from our reflection, then we act on it. If we don't act on it, we don't have it as insight. When we gain insight, there is that aha moment. There's a new outlook. We see ourselves and we see the world differently, and that naturally flows through as our behavior. So the reason that we don't do the right thing, even though we know what it is because we don't have the insight. So, Vedanta presents practices for developing the humility and for engaging in reflection. That is how the insight is gained. So, is Vedanta for us? Yes. If the disciplines are practiced correctly. So what are the disciplines? First of all, self-assessment. What's your nature? How reflective are you naturally? How analytical are you? How devotional are you? How active? When you know yourself, then you can apportion the different disciplines appropriately. You have to set a goal. There's no point starting a project if you don't know where it's ending. We have to make lifestyle changes, things like exercise, sleep, nutrition. We need to look at the things that we are doing in our life that are distracting us, that are causing us mental agitation, that are keeping us bound in immature thought patterns. And then once we've got that as a base, humility and devotion to open the mind up, self-inquiry, that's what the reflection we were talking about, selfless action, serving a cause outside of the ego, and community building, forming bonds, connection with others. So I'm not going to go into these disciplines in any detail, that's been done elsewhere. But to answer the question, is Vedanta the answer to us? Those of us who know the right thing but don't do it? Yes, if it's practiced correctly. I say this because the practices, when done incorrectly, they can actually consolidate the growth edges instead of getting us to move through them. So our growth edges are the places where we have our blind spots. Perhaps we act in certain ways that are antisocial and we don't see it. We're immature and don't see it. We have egocentric demands. We personalize things. There's a lack of resilience. So that if there's a loss, we're crushed rather than being able to move through it, etc. If the practices are done wrongly, then we can consolidate those growth edges. So there's a process known as spiritual bypassing. Essentially what that means is that we're using the practices and we're using the knowledge to avoid dealing with our growth edges. Take a simple example. Let's say somebody has a fear of being rejected. And so when it comes to their partner, their family, their friends, their boss, they don't hold clear boundaries. They let everybody walk all over them. They don't voice their concerns. They never say no. They always keep the peace. What's happening? Their ego is getting in the way of what they ought to do. So for them, a growth edge would be to say no to the things that should be said no to voice their concerns, to push back. That would be their growth edge. However, you look at the principles of Vedanta. Humility is valued. Non-injury, compassion, forgiveness. These are all positive qualities. And so what does our friend who's trying to practice spirituality do? She justifies continuing to stay in her inferiority complex and says, oh no, I'm humble. I'm not going to push my thoughts onto anybody else. I'm not going to push my opinions. That person's acting in a way which is harmful. Ah, poor fellow. We have to have compassion. He's only doing what he can. No, it's not right for me to be angry. Non-violence. So what's happening here? She's keeping herself stuck in her inferiority complex. The ego is being consolidated and it's being justified by spiritual concepts. So she's bypassing an unpleasant truth, the ego's ignorance, and using Vedanta to keep herself in that immature state. So while these practices can elevate us, they can also be wrongly applied to keep us stuck in the ego.